Esports is an industry, is a business of yes men. Almost by its very nature, by the hierarchy of how it's composed, how it's put together, the way money flows around the industry, the way certain positions are decided politically. I mean, it's full of organizations who spit out the same old rhetoric. On the one hand, they're loyal to players and they're a family, and it's all about we love all our players. And yet on the other hand, they claim to be trying to go a sports franchise model, and they're all aiming to be world champions and always have year-on-year increase in performance and become the best and get the best players. Then we have the players who buy into the same old bullshit, and every teammate they have is wonderful, is great at his role and never has any key flaws to him, and there's no other better teammate on another team. There's no other team he might ever want to play for. There's nobody that he lost against where it was a teammate's fault. It was his own fault only. It's everyone. We win as a team, we lose as a team, all the same shit. There's events that refuse to acknowledge problems they have, that just make excuses, and their employees who work for them will always try to weasel out of it, and nothing's ever their fault, and nothing ever could have been prepared for, and nothing ever will be different later because it was their fault. It's like, oh, it was fine now, we did the best we could, but even so, it'll be better next time. It's like, well, why? How could it be? And what's this cognitive dissonance going on there? There's the people within the industry, so many people who daren't even speak out against literally criminal activity for fear of either reprisals, like that person's going to act against them and might still be some person with some level of power in the industry, or that person owes them money, and naively they think to themselves, even though this person's fucked me now, done criminal things, withheld money from me, well, if I say something now, then I lose any chance to get the money, and I'll never, maybe that person will fuck me up later down the road when they have more money. All these terrible scenarios where people just say yes. Either explicitly they say yes and everything's great, or they say yes to the party line. They say yes to the consensus reality that we're hiding within, where people behind the scenes know what's happening and people in the front don't, and they just see this glorious sunshine and rainbows and butterflies going everywhere and little children eating strawberries, and what a wonderful world. Nothing dark and evil around here. And the thing is, I understand to a degree how it's gotten to this position, because if you were there in the early days, esports is still a burgeoning industry, but way back in time, when it's been through these periods where it got big, it started to get a bit big, and then it had its falls, it had its recessions in the economy, it had times when sponsor money was scaled back, when organizations went bankrupt, and it would keep getting these sort of resets as it kept building up. There weren't many jobs to go around in a lot of these different areas. Whatever, pro player, working for an event, journalist, whatever position you may be in, event organizer. So, okay, previously there weren't many jobs to go around, there wasn't much money, so if you were making any kind of decent money, people had kind of a financial pressure they felt upon themselves that I better stay in line to keep this job, and I better not upset this guy here because I might have to work for him in a year if this company goes bust. I don't want to make too many enemies here, even if this person's doing criminal activity. Okay, well, they didn't do it to me, so maybe I can rationalize that way and I'll work for them in a few years. I mean, there were years where, in theory, I was one of the top journalists and I was making far less than minimum wage. I was making half of what minimum wage would be in my country for someone of my age. There was years when I was making $10,000 a year, which is absolutely nothing. That's like the poverty line in England, you think? And yet, you'd see all these people who they drank the Kool-Aid every time they got a job in esports. It's not just that they joined it. The reason why I like that phrase that Americans have culturally, drank the Kool-Aid, which comes from the old thing of where the Jonestown cult, where they actually drank Kool-Aid, which essentially killed everyone. It had poison in it. And there was even people there who knew it had poison in it, but they still drank it because they didn't want to, well, there's the social thing of like, we're part of this, and they just believed in it so much. That's the key thing about that great idiom, drinking the Kool-Aid. It's not just that you join a company and you think cynically, like some sort of Game of Thrones shit, like, oh, well, to play this politically correct, I should say I'm into that, and I should pretend I don't actually think this way. No, that would be one thing. That in itself would be a bit disingenuous and perhaps even to a degree malevolent and possibly even immoral, but it's these people join, they do have those original thoughts, but then they actually realize, unfortunately, that the easiest way to join one of these cults, to join an organization and just buy into everything, is if you really do buy into it. Is if you mind fuck yourself, if you program yourself so that becomes your reality, then, well, you won't be lying in that sense, will you? You really will believe all this bullshit, and it is all the case. And yet, as soon as these people come out of these organizations, they get deprogrammed, they go about their own ways, they don't have the influences that are coming in anymore, there's not the same pressures, and suddenly, we see them all unravel. Suddenly they'll say that this teamwork was full of shit, and that this person was a criminal, and I always thought that person should have been stopped. Where were you, mate? You weren't there. You never did anything. You just sat back idly. It's all very well once it's all gone out and everyone's seen that this person's a criminal. Everyone's finally decried them. That now you can say it. You haven't contributed anything there. You haven't done something good there. You haven't somehow redeemed yourself by saying it after the fact. The problem is, as an industry, if you're just looking at like journalism, for example, because obviously it's easier to talk to my own life. Journalism in esports, it's an industry based on acceptance to a degree, or at least that's how the financial model has always worked. Because in the old days, before things like Reddit and social media, the only way you were going to ever get viewed and as a result become a name and as a result get money from anywhere big, because everyone's going to need advertising dollars, at least in the past, is by originally being a site, and the site has to have a level of exposure and notoriety, because yes, you can get hyperlinked by other sites, but that started to die out in sort of the mid 2000s onwards. You had to have a site you had to join one of the big sites essentially. You couldn't just be good and show yourself to be good and get the hits like you can now. You had to join one of the big sites. So to join one of the big sites, you have to be accepted by them. They have to, even if you're amazing, doesn't matter. If they don't want to hire you, they can keep you out. You have to be accepted. Your writing has to be popular there, so they justify being able to keep paying you all the time. Then you go into the modern day, okay, with now Reddit, etc. Okay, that's freed up some of the hegemony of sites running everything and locking people out and freezing people out and firing people, whatever. But now, in the Reddit era, yes, we have a lot more freedom, a lot more democracy to a degree of opinion where people can actually affect what gets popular, and as a result you can write for a no-name site, but if you do good work there and it gets high on Reddit, well, you can get the same hits as the guy who writes for the big site. But then now hits becomes the big metric by which things are judged. So how popular is it in terms of hits? How much do people like it? How much are people willing to upvote it on Reddit? How much are people willing to upvote it? Here's a key distinction people don't make. To overcome people who don't like what's said, they disagree with it, who are going to downvote it. That's another factor within itself. So you're going to have even more people who like it than otherwise would. And so you get into all these cliches of the industry, which are cliches of all entertainment industries, which I've never agreed with, which is this notion of, well, what you're supposed to be doing is you're supposed to give the people what they want. Now, I've never agreed with that because, first of all, it's very condescending to look at a great amount of people and go, I know exactly what you want. And if you just tell me, kind of tell me what you want, then I'll give you it. Like, I'll just give you whatever it is. I mean, this is an artistic, creative medium. You're supposed to be speaking from within yourself of what you think and how you think and structuring your thoughts and developing something and crafting something. You're not just looking and go, oh, he just wants a burger, so I'll just make a burger. You're supposed to create your own thing, and if someone doesn't like the flavor of the thing you do, or the way you've cooked it, or your particular sense for the ingredients, then that's not for them. And it's not up to you to decide that you have to do it that way in order to have success. There are other paths here. Now, the naive way to say it, it has something to it, but it's just not my particular flavor, is people would say, okay, instead of giving people what they want, I try to give them what they need. And yeah, to a degree, there is something to that. Personally, that's not my approach at all. I think everyone should just, I've always said this in terms of being creative or being a writer, you should just try, in terms of writing, to write the article that only you could write the best. As in, no one could write a Thorin article better than Thorin can. You know why? Because I've spent over a decade learning what a Thorin article even is. What does he even think? How does he structure his thoughts? What is his perspective on things? And so I just try to write Thorin articles as well as I can. And as a result, no one else can do that. Now, they can write other articles that are better in other senses, that other people prefer, might even have more success, might be more accepted, might be better liked, whatever the case may be. But my particular niche, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to develop that. And if people are on board with it, if people like it, and I think if you do a good enough job there, there'll always be someone who is, whether it's niche or what, then that will be the case. So I just try to tell my own story. I try to do my own work. I try to speak my own voice. So if it plays into someone, giving them what they need, okay, maybe that is the case, because maybe they need a different perspective, or they need someone who's willing to speak out in these senses. But I'm not trying to condescendingly decide to give, these people are fans of this team, I'll just give them stuff saying their team's great and telling them what wonderful things there are, so they'll all be, oh yeah, we're on board with this, great, you're finally doing real journalism there. This is bullshit. This is what this whole yes men culture is about. And I hate it in journalism. I don't like it in terms of other areas in the industry. I don't like it in esports as a whole, because it leads to this echo chamber effect, which is just negative. It enhances the negative things of the industry. It brings us all down to the lowest common denominator, because we're not having any nuance. We're not trying to do things that are different and won't be liked by everyone, but have merit and have a place within the industry. So when you talk about the yes men, well, who else is there? Who is the antidote to this? Who are the people who in some way stand against those ideals? Or rather, I'd put it the other way, stand for certain ideals, stand for certain principles. And then these other people who don't, and who then set themselves against it by choosing the easy way out, or choosing the politically expedient way, or choosing the financially advantageous way over something that's moral, or the way that they actually could do great work. They're the ones setting themselves against our ideals and our aspirations and our principles. So if they're the yes men, we'll call this group I'm going to talk about now the no men. And so two obvious examples I can give you, because I can speak to these two examples. I don't know a lot of other people in the industry, so I wouldn't attempt to speak on their behalf. But there's me, obviously, and then a friend of mine, Richard Lewis, who's a journalist for many years, has a degree in journalism. He writes for the Daily Dot. So, okay, we've both been around a long time. I know a bit about his history. I've worked with him, well, on broadcasts, not on any websites. I've talked to him quite a lot. So the problem is, when we are the no men, when we're not the guy who comes out and says yes to this and toes the party line and says, oh, this person's wonderful, isn't he? You know, do the fans think this? Well, I'll just tell them that even more so, and I'll use my writing skill, but in sort of a media marketing way to just sell them a really crafted idea but of what they want and what they want me to say, and to tell them, oh, did I say the right thing? Can I have the money now? None of that shit. Instead, what we're trying to do is just speak to our own story. But that's often billed as that we're just negative, or we're only critical. I've never understood how critical is like a negative quality, but whatever. Negative, critical, or we profit off the misfortune of others. First of all, that's a very easy way to discredit someone, because you just say, oh, since they are those things, like, you know, you don't need to listen to them because obviously there's something sinister behind that and all the rest of it. Well, first of all, I'd say there's something sinister behind someone who never has anything critical to say of anyone, where everything's wonderful. Even, what is it, literally criminal activity, and then years after the fact, once the person's been exposed as a criminal, everyone's on side that it's wrong, then they're like, oh yeah, I always thought that was wrong, and shame on that person. No, mate, you now get judged on the fact that you didn't say anything at the time, and that you thought was perfectly fine. And hey, maybe you even propped up that whole bullshit and that dictatorship within your organization, or this criminal behavior. Maybe you made excuses for it. Maybe you said some spurious logic, like, oh, well, I'm sure he wouldn't do a thing like that. I've met him many times, he's a great guy, and oh yeah, well, he's always seemed nice when I've talked to him. You know, whatever it is you did, These are the areas where no one's ever judged that way. The people who say the critical thing are judged super harshly at the time, but the good guys, they don't get judged the same way. Have you ever noticed that? It's not easy to be the person who's always willing, if needs be, to say no, to call out someone as this bullshit, to create situations that might be politically and financially inexpedient, might actually hurt you financially, might hurt you politically, might hurt you in terms of relationships, where this person, you might actually get along with them in real life, you might even be friends with them to a degree, but they do something that's immoral, or it's harmful to the industry, or it's clearly just bullshit in the way they're putting it out there. No one's calling it out, no one's bringing attention to it, no one's putting even a counter position to it, no one's even giving another perspective beyond the company line. Well, it's not easy to always be that person. Yeah, sometimes there's a person you dislike, so it's easy to say that, oh, this person's full of shit. Or sometimes there's a situation where it's obvious that this person's a criminal, it's just that everyone else is afraid of their position and they don't have the independence to do it. It's not as difficult in those scenarios. But sometimes when this is happening, it's not for sinister reasons. It's not just that you dislike the person. It's not just that, oh, you're going to get some fame off the fact that they've done something wrong. Sometimes it has to be done because it's the right thing to do, because it's an ideal, an aspiration that you have in terms of who you can be and who you're going to be as a person, and the compromises that you're willing or unwilling to make as a person, as a moral figure in this world. And so when you think about that, the no men, and you think of this negativity that it's always tarnished and feathered as, oh, they're just negative, critical, profit of others' misfortune. Think about the good guys. Think about the guys who never have anything negative to say, never have anything critical to say, never call anything out. Where are the good guys when something fucked up goes down? Why do they remain silent? Why do they buy into party lines? Why do they sometimes not even remain silent, which in itself is a bit questionable? But we'll speak out on other platforms, we'll say other things, and sometimes we'll even, as I say, prop up those things. Why are those the good guys? Why is that a good thing to do? Why is that something positive? Why is that something, instead of critical, inspirational? Or, wow, everyone should be professional like that person who never calls out things that are obvious bullshit and are harmful to others, and actually will continue to perpetuate harm and hurt to others within the industry, because this person who has the voice, who has the position, the pedestal, he has a voice to speak out and actually say something. He doesn't use that power. He chooses to keep that power for himself, or even turns it in the service of someone who's doing these immoral, inadvisable, obnoxious, criminal, whatever the word you want to use for the particular spectrum of behavior we're talking about. Never speak against that. To give you an example, okay, who's a good guy in the North American esports industry? Hotshot GG, owner of CLG, Counterlogic Gaming. If you watch his streams, seems like a fairly likable guy. You watch his interviews. We all know his personality. He can be funny sometimes. He's a good streamer, fairly entertaining. He was a good player at one point in time. He knows a lot of the people. He has a decent view on esports. He's come to his own conclusions. Okay, here's one of the good guys, right? So why do the good guys remain silent? I'm going to use this as an example, okay? So do you remember when Reginald, owner of TSM, came out, and he didn't jokingly say this? It wasn't a joke. Let's make that clear. When someone makes a joke, it's one thing. And if someone even says, right, it was just a joke. He came out and literally said, as an explicit statement, Monte Cristo then coach of CLG, was not a real coach. He was a fraud. He was only a coach for the cameras, and that there was no real coach going on. And then he supplemented it by saying that he'd been informed this by CLG members and that everyone within the industry knew it and that no one would deny it. Now, when he said all of this, it's one thing for him to say that, okay, there's his opinion, and his opinion has a certain weight, and he has a certain authority, and certain people who follow him, certain people who are liable to believe what he says. Now, in this scenario, I'll just make a distinction here before I go further. It's not the case that when someone says something false about you, you are obliged to come out and say, no, that's not true, and here's why it's not true, and prove it's not true somehow. Because first of all, you can't prove something's not true, but you're not actually obliged to do that. Like if someone comes out and says I'm a rapist tomorrow, I'm not obliged to be like, I'm not, and here's some evidence, here's some girlfriends that I talked about, and I didn't. I don't have to do any of that stuff unless I'm in a court of law. If someone talks shit, it's true, you don't have to. But if they say it in a manner where their opinions carries a lot of weight and it's going to be believed, and then you find out, you look at the social situation of everyone's believing this, and you know what? No one is speaking out about it, and he said no one would deny it. And then in fact, he said that people even within the organization have done this, and no one denies that. And then he said that it was all fake in this sense, and that everyone in the industry knows it, and no one else in the industry is coming forwards. In this sort of a scenario, it's not that you're obliged to, but if you're the sort of person who's then going to ever present yourself as someone who's honest and transparent and likes to tell the fans what's going on and give your thoughts and explain things, if you're going to ever present yourself as that, here's a time when you must speak. It's absolutely critical. It's not even to some degree it's that you're obliged to. It's that it's almost a moral imperative. If you're ever going to present yourself as that sort of a person and say that you have that level of transparency, if you don't want to, fine, but don't ever say you are. So in this particular scenario, where was Hotshot GG? Where were the members of CLG who were being coached by Monte Cristo? Where were the other people in the industry who were like, wait a minute, they said that in the industry, it's always known that, but I don't think that's the case. I've seen this person coaching, I've seen the effect they've had. Hotshot GG said nothing. The players said nothing. The people didn't come out within the industry and say something. Now, it's one thing for the people in the industry not to say something. They'll have to choose. They'll have to bear their own burdens there. But for Hotshot GG himself, here's the problem, okay? It's not that he's absolutely obliged to do it and he must do it because I say so. But it's funny, when I make a video criticizing CLG's problems in the playoffs and these repeated issues they've had and then the excuses they've given, when I criticize all of that, it's very easy for Hotshot GG to instantly, within a day, have a Reddit comment up explaining why this shouldn't be my role and maybe I shouldn't do this and I shouldn't speak this one, this is unprofessional, and essentially, to a degree, attacking or criticizing me and my opinions and trying to kind of paint them as false in any sense. It's funny that it's so easy to do that. That's part of the problem in esports, okay? It's not that for Hotshot GG to make a statement about this, he has to take out a full-page advert in the newspaper, or he has to give an interview to a reporter and wait for that to get on the news or on television. No, he has Twitter. He can instantly make a tweet now. Like when the Corey scenario came up, boom, straight away, Twitter, Reddit link, there we go, everything. I'm denying it, and I'm denying it on this reasons. When Thorin makes this video, making a Reddit post, this is not the case, like I don't like the way this is presented, and maybe you should follow a more professional pattern. You can do all these things because it's so easy, it's at the click of a button. And yet, where were these comments when Monte Cristo was dragged over the coals? When his whole career was essentially, in terms of the coaching stuff, a shambles because he was shown to be a fraud and no one would come forwards and take his side and all the rest of it. Yeah, the good guys aren't ever there then, are they? In that case, they're not really good guys. They're just quiet guys, the guys who always do what's best for their wallet, the guys who only want to say what people want to hear, so they don't want to say things otherwise in that sense. They don't want to make enemies with other people. When they know someone can't help them, in this particular scenario, they're willing to let that person be hung out to dry, to just say, fuck it, cut my losses here. No point in me getting involved in some drama, me getting potentially some negative opinions from me giving my opinion on this, and hey, maybe this isn't the right moment for me. Maybe I'll just chill back. Maybe I'll just see how this plays out. Funny how the good guys always end up doing that, eh? They never speak out against that. That's the thing. All the people who do speak out these things are always presented as negative, always as critical. It's always, that's the way they're built. Yet you look at it the other way. Where is the counterbalance to this? Where is the good guy who's a great person and he's always speaking out on these issues and he's saying the political thing that's important to say and he's calling something out here? They almost don't exist because by the nature of the way these things are conceptualized and treated in the public perception, whoever does that is instantly a no man and is instantly negative, critical, profits off others' misfortunes, should shut up, is unprofessional, all these things that we hear time and time again. In the case of myself and Richard, I mean, I will say this, there's a degree to which, in a way, we're kind of made for this. As strange as that might sound, as in the nature of who we are as a people, our backgrounds in life, our jobs within the industry, to a degree have crafted people, and we've crafted ourselves as we've gone through this process to be able to succeed and be able to get where we want to be, into the sorts of people who can say no like this and who will say no and who feel there's an imperative to it. It's important to say no and to provide this counterbalance. And part of that, to a degree, I will acknowledge, comes from the old school of esports, comes from our backgrounds that are unique in some senses to a lot of the newer people, okay? So in the case of myself and Richard, we actually both come within England from, well, within the United Kingdom, because Richard technically comes from Wales. I come from England. We come from some of the poorest places within our country, the United Kingdom, the overall country, okay? Richard comes from like a colliery town in Wales, which presumably the industry's all collapsed around there. It was a very bleak time in the 80s when he was born, growing up to the 1990s. And there unemployment's running rife, drug abuse, there was a lot of heroin around in Wales at this particular time. Myself, growing up in the northeast of England, is literally the area that has the highest unemployment rate, has a big drug problem, has a lot of crime going on in this area. Repeatedly, the statistics are always very high. All these issues to deal with. Not many jobs, not many opportunities. It means that we grew up in a world where, yeah, if you wanted to be someone creative, or you wanted to be someone artistic, you wanted to be expressive, you wanted to have a unique job, you want to develop your mind, you want to go in this particular sense, there weren't a lot of options for that. That wasn't even something conceptually that could ever be for something like you. That wasn't for someone like you. We both come from working class backgrounds, poor families that don't have a lot of money, don't have a lot of opportunity as a result, don't have a lot of advantages going for us. And so coming from this sort of a world, yeah, there was no future. There was no potential in terms of great things that could happen to you. There was no chance for you to become someone who could achieve a unique lifestyle in this particular sense. To use kind of a cliche, there was grey skies every day. You'd wake up and it would just be these grey skies and there's unemployment everywhere. What does lie in the future for you is a boring, mundane office job. I mean, I know a lot of the people who are from my generation, even people who got first-class degrees from Oxford University, one of the best in the world, some of those ended up working in call centres a year later. And the guy who was their boss would be someone who had actually not even gone to university, and he just started at the call centre, and as a result, he's now ahead of them in the work world, despite the fact they've spent all this money and they've been conned into this game that if you get this degree, you're going to have a place in the world and you're going to be able to pursue your dream, and instead they're stuck in this dead-end world. And so coming from this sort of a place, what actually still matters in this world, like what you say, what you represent, what you think, what goes on within the confines of your mind, away from other people's opinions and what they tell you, their imperatives of the way that it must be, and the things you must think and you must say and you must do, and all this authority, this oppression bearing down on you. At least within your mind, at least there's some freedom right there, those inches between your ears, where you can have a place where it's important that you keep this purified and clean, and that it represents something important, and that you don't allow the virus to get in there and overtake you, and you don't willingly let it go in so that you become assimilated into this bullshit of, all this shit that's going to go on anywhere in the world. Now, coming from this sort of a world, part of the reason also why you didn't imagine things could be anything special, and you didn't have this full stream soul to you, which I feel like unfortunately is part of why people are in this yes men culture, because they still believe that dream could be theirs if they just do what they're told, if they follow the carrot, if the person tells them, you got to make this compromise if you want to make it, son. Okay, I'll do that, and don't say anything here. I know it's nothing to do with you, and you could say something, but you might have to work for that guy in the future. Whatever the compromises they're led into, it's because they're sold something that could be possible. Maybe to a degree we don't have that because that's not programmed into us. We didn't buy into that story, because I mean, even if you watch television when we were growing up, television was nearly all stuff going on in the bottom part of the country. I mean, I realise Richard comes from even more the bottom part of the country. I mean, in the south, in the wealthy area where the most people live in terms of the wealthiest jobs and positions, and this is where the entertainment centre is. And this seems like a different world even from the places that I grew up. And then beyond that, even the world of the English culture and the entertainment industry and the politics and media, beyond that, then you have these images that are blasted across the Atlantic in your television of America, this world that may as well be fantasy. I mean, it is because it's entertainment industry, but this seems like a sci-fi world to you. This notion of people in Hollywood or music industry or people who are big political bigwigs over there and all sorts of these things. This isn't a life that could be for you. And so you don't buy into that bullshit to a degree. And more importantly, coming from this position where you are there, where the sanctity of your own mind and your own thoughts is important, you don't allow people to speak to you in a condescending manner. Part of this maybe is a working class thing. It's that someone else who's, say, a middle class person who's bought into the notion of these class systems, this is who I am and where I am relative to others, and I've got to keep my place here, and if I do well here, I could become kind of the nouveau riche, I could become like sort of upper class from being wealthy and having success, and I'll be acknowledged. Part of that is the notion that when people are above you in any sense, authority, or they have more money than you, or they're better class than you, or they're ahead of you in terms of where you want to be in your career, then they have authority over you. And you know the old idiom, shit rolls downhill. They can speak to you in a particular manner, they can treat you in a certain manner, and there's no equality there. It's not a two-way stream. It comes down and that's it. You can only put it down to people below you, and you have to try and get higher, therefore to be able to put it down to people like you. We don't accept that. You're not going to speak to us in a condescending manner. You could be anyone. You could be the head of a game developer, you could be the richest investor in all of esports, you could be the person who's the leader of a massive organization, and you're not going to sell us a line of bullshit to our faces, then expect us to tell you back how wonderful you are, how you're right, how everything you're saying is correct, or to remain silent that you're talking bullshit, that you're being disingenuous in this manner, that actually the way you're behaving is condescending. We will not speak to us in that manner. That's one principle between the two of us. I think that I can see it, I relate to him on that level. I think there's a shared sense that is something in life that will not be broken. And so what else is there in esports that's formed this in terms of our journeys through the industry? Well, for a start off, esports has had poor conditions for many, many years. Esports itself was poor, much like our backgrounds to a degree. You had to work for very little money. The site you were on might go bust, or might just lose its sponsors, or might just lose its popularity and not be interested. And then you might have to find somewhere else to work. And now you have to work with people who you've had to be critical of, or people who can block you out of the industry because they didn't like the way you handled this, or they're friends with this player who you spoke the truth about, or, well, let's not say truth, that's a very dangerous word, isn't it? You gave your perspective on and you tried to be honest and objective about. And so you're working for very little money in an industry where you weren't very popular, and you're slaving away at a craft that isn't even particularly respected. This is something people won't realize now because of how big esports has gotten and how many fans there is now who love all this stuff, and they're loving analysis on desks, and they're loving commentary and YouTube videos and interviews, and also it has gotten to a fairly reasonably high media level, and there's a lot of people into it now. Back in the day, you were mocked if you worked in esports as a professional. The only way you weren't is if you were one of these people who was the good guy, who like everyone liked, and you never said anything negative. You were friends with all the players and all the bigwigs at the industry, and then maybe people would like you. And you never said anything against any team or anything critical. Therefore, most of the fans liked you and got along with you, and they liked your personality. If you're that sort of person, maybe you weren't mocked. But if you were the sort of people me and Richard were in this sense, you were always mocked. Even pro players used to look down on you. Some of them were into it, okay. Some of the more pure ones I've noticed, some of the real competitors, some of the geniuses of the game, they would understand that there was something about this game where it goes beyond being liked or how many people do it. It's about a craft. It's about working at something, trying to achieve something, trying to be more, trying to make something more of this game, trying to appreciate what's going on and the hard work and the difficulty and the creativity and the mental space and the beauty of the game. Those people, to a degree, would. But there were some pros where they didn't like the idea that you wanted to do a long interview, and they thought it was a bit creepy and a bit weird that you wanted to ask them in-depth questions about stuff. And no, don't overthink things. I just play the game, and if I win, cool, and if I don't, when's the bar open? Like, what time's the after party? They didn't want to know about that shit. Even pros looked down on you. Fans would treat you like losers. This is a real thing. It's not even. I'm not just talking about just haters here. Fans would sometimes, if you had an opinion they didn't like, they'd laugh at how little money you made and what a loser you are, and how they were in university or they were going to get a job when they left school and get $100,000 a year, and they knew you were making $8,000 a year or £10,000 a year, and what a loser you are, and look how old you are, and you're doing this job. And okay, even worse than that, when you said opinions people didn't like, or you said things publicly like this, people wouldn't just say, oh, I disagree with that, and I don't like his opinion, and I wish he wouldn't say that. They'd even then attack you directly. And it would nearly always be the same line of attack. It's one that's repeated to this day, so that's why I'm going to mention it. It would be the attack that you're not even a journalist. It's that you're a journalist, and put that in like inverted commas, as if they were only calling you journalist, as if to say like, I know his title is journalist, but we all know he's not actually a journalist. I mean, what is a journalist? Not what he is. He represents everything that's not journalism. He doesn't know what journalism is about. He's not practicing journalism. That's the problem. Journalism isn't just a job title, which it is, and if you do journalism, then you are a journalist. That's not even debatable. But it's also an act. It's a habit. And so when you're practicing journalism again and again, like for 10 years more, like me and Richard, then you are a journalist. That's not debatable. Now, someone could say you're a bad journalist, or they don't like the way you do it, or they disagree with your philosophy, but they can't disagree that you're a journalist, except they do. And yet this is the world we live in. I mean, imagine a heart surgeon who's got a degree in heart surgery, and he's done a master's, and well, he's the doctor, obviously, so after you've done a master's already. He's got a doctorate in heart surgery. He's done many heart surgeries. He's given conferences on heart surgery. He writes for Heart Surgery Monthly or whatever the fuck. And then someone doesn't like an opinion he has on heart surgery, or an opinion on general surgery and even biology. And then they say, this so-called heart surgeon, as he calls himself. Like, well, no, mate, he is one. It can be proven he is. That's his job. That's on his tax form. He's paying tax from it. He's earning money for doing it. He's practiced it for many years. You can't even debate that he is, in fact, one. That's like a very, very meaningless and condescending way to dismiss someone. You're not even attacking what they believe or what they've said. You're trying to just claim that they aren't even that job, like as though they woke up one day, put on a fake doctor's uniform, were like, I'm a heart surgeon. Yep, that's me. And it's like, well, do you have any qualifications for that? No, I just do whatever I want, and then I say it's heart surgery. So come at me. I mean, you can't argue with that, can you? Like, that's not at all what the person's doing. I don't know anyone who'd be a fucking plumber and do that. You can disagree with the way the guy did it and say he did a bad job and all the rest of it. But if he has his plumbing degree, his job says plumber, he pays taxes as a plumber, he's done loads of plumbing jobs, you can't really say he's not a plumber, can you? You wouldn't. In fact, people would look at you like you were an idiot if you said, yeah, this cost this so-called plumber, as he is, and they'd be like, well, doesn't it say that on his van, and hasn't he done it for years and got a degree in all that, and got the, well, not a degree in plumbing, but certificates? Doesn't he even work for British Gas? Like, but yeah, I guess he does, but I didn't like the way he did that, so I'm going to say that's none of that matters, and none of it's true, because I don't think he is a plumber. Like, people look at you like you're a fucking idiot. Yeah, if you do that in esports or journalism, that's just fine, apparently. So that's the thing. You look at this world of the yes men, the no men. First of all, there shouldn't really be a distinct thing like that. But unfortunately, there is, because as I originally stated, it's not that we have set ourselves up in opposition to these people. It's that this is the way, in an ideal world, that most people would speak in. It's not the sense that they have to do on everything. I don't say no about everything. There's certain things I disagree with Richard on, or actually I buy along with certain party lines that I do think are correct and that the public don't like, for example. But in this scenario, the point is, everyone should be capable of expressing their own thoughts, their own philosophies, figuring out what they think is right, figuring out when they think something's bullshit, and being able or willing to give a different perspective or a different opinion, or to say, I disagree with that, or even to say, when they see something wrong, just to even use their position to say, that is wrong, and I think that's fucked up, and I think we all have to stand against this, and I'll even give awareness to this. Just to be willing to do that. It's not that you have to be a no man. It's that everyone, if they could do this, we'd have a balance in the industry, because that's the key thing. It's not that me and Richard say no about everything. I don't say no about everything. It's that there's balance. We're willing to say yes about something. We're willing to say maybe. We're willing to say, let's see on this. We're going to say that's definitely not right. Someone say no, certainly not, absolutely not. This person is a fucked up, is a criminal, is a crook, is scum, is a piece of shit. There's a spectrum to it, and we're willing to go wherever on the spectrum is necessary to go, based on who we are as people and what we see as the way the industry is, and what else is going on there where something's not being called out. That's the thing. Sometimes you have to be the guy who just takes the fall and does it. It'd be nice if there'd be other people who could do it sometimes. If a good guy who's involved in this situation could at least just speak out once, or could at least just not. If you're not even going to speak out, at least just don't fucking tell lies. At least don't buy into some bullshit that you know to a degree might be bullshit, or you haven't even investigated it, but you then use your weight to throw behind it and go, well, that can't be true, because, you know, I've known him many years, and, oh, well, I didn't technically have his name written on Skype, so I guess everyone who just said that's a fucking liar. That's my implication, as we all know is fucking going on with some of this bullshit, and then no one's even held accountable, because, again, if you ever do anything critical, you're a bad person. So the people who are going on behind the scenes, who do this, that's part of the reason why we're put in this position, because we're the ones who seem extreme, because we're stood out on our own. Because whereas everyone else could be in a line with us and they could have this opinion with this whole spectrum of opinions, they've all took a step back, and in taking a step back, it looks like we've stepped forwards. And have we to a degree? Yeah, not on every issue, but we're just the ones left out there on our own. So it seems insane that, wow, these people are saying this, and how can they say that? That's so unprofessional. And why does he have to, why rock the boat? Why not just go along with it? Hey, that doesn't even have anything to do with you. Don't talk about their opinion. What's that got to do with you? Be more professional. You're a so-called journalist. All this shit. Yeah, well, that's the problem, isn't it? Other people are making it seem as extreme, because a lot of these opinions aren't even extreme. Like, a lot of the opinions we have on players, or the things that are going on that are obviously bullshit, within normal worlds of media and politics, etc., people are saying much more extreme things, and not even in a ridiculous fashion, like they're all haters, etc., that they're just allowed to have these opinions, and people don't say that they're not someone of that profession, etc. So I don't care if other people play this expedience of the political game or the financial game or even just popularity, even just trying to appeal to the lowest common denominator, have everyone like them, try to be the good guy. Whenever you're trying to sell the image of the good guy, I'd be suspicious right there, because people who are good guys don't have to keep telling you they're good guys and convincing you and say, oh, look at this, aren't they a good guy? Oh, no, I never did that, so I'm a good guy. It's apparent who's a good guy. You don't need to tell someone that. They will know. So yeah, the no men. Someone has to do it. I think in general, everyone should be able to say no to something. And when people can't say no to something, there's something wrong with the industry in that world.